Well, good evening and welcome, or good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're watching this program, and welcome to another scintillating episode of Porch Talk. I, of course, am Paul W. Marino, and my compadre here is the one and only Eugene Michaelenko.
I have a middle initial too. It's F.
Oh, F.
Eugene F.
I wonder what your parents were thinking when they gave you that.
I know exactly what they were thinking. I was named after a priest and a doctor, Father Eugene Ozimik and Dr. Francis Gospodarek.
Cool. Well, if you take a look behind us, you will see this week's mystery picture. The mystery is, why don't they get some new pictures? Well,
Next week.
yes, it's because we're both old and we like old pictures. So there. Joanne, would you please put the photo in front of us? Thank you, dear. So this is a photo taken either in Adams or North Adams. We're not going to say which. But we would like you to identify this building. No, it was not the earliest McDonald's in the area. You know, I knew you were going to guess that.
Right.
But it's not. It was actually the first Burger King. Oh! Sorry, I gave that away. Well, it's not that either. Please give us a call at 664-4408 and give us your guess as to what the answer is. And if you get it right, either by knowing the answer or just taking a shot in the dark, you will get bragging rights for the next 2 weeks. So, Joanne, show us again. Oh, I keep forgetting what we look like.
We're twins again. We're both in black.
Yeah.
I got to get you a cowboy hat.
Actually, I've got one. It's leather, and it's all dusty right now.
We could do something with that.
Yeah, I can clean that up. So, we are going to continue with the slideshow that Gene has for us. And Joanne, we're going to continue with the slideshow. There we go.
Thank you, Joanne. Yes, Adams was a community of immigrants. 5 languages were preached from pulpits on Sundays, and we only had a population of a little over 12,000. So there were a lot of languages spoken in Adams at one time. How many languages were spoken in North Adams? You had Welsh?
Yeah, there was Welsh in Blackington.
Italian, French.
Italian, French, English.
My mother was brought up in North Adams. She was born in North Adams, and they spoke Polish. There was a small, little Polish community in North Adams of Lipaks and Dudas and Christians, and I can't think of who else. And the old Lebanese. Probably I'm sure they spoke Arabic and Yiddish in this town.
Oh, yes, Yiddish too.
Jews and Syrians and Lebanese.
I should be ashamed of myself for forgetting the Jews.
Yeah, because I mentioned them. There's also Jews in Adams.
Well, you know, when a couple of years ago, when North Adams got a menorah, because we turn on the Christmas lights, we got a menorah too, and I was both happy and proud to tell a little story at that beginning, and that is that when the Methodist Church burned, it was the previous one to the building that's there now. It was an electrical fire, but the building was completely demolished. And the first congregation to come forward and say, feel free to use our church until you can rebuild yours. It was not the Baptists across the street. It was not the Congregationalists across Monument Square. It was not the Episcopalians on Summer Street. Neither was it the Unitarian Universalist Church, also on Summer Street. And neither was it either of the Roman Catholic churches, the one up the street or the one down the street.
St. Francis and Notre Dame.
Yeah. It was the Jews.
Which synagogue? The one on Center Street?
Yes, it was on Center Street. It was originally built as a theater, and they were the very first ones to come forward and say, "You are our neighbors, you are our friends, please feel free to use our..."
And they were probably the farthest one away from the Methodist Church.
Yeah, in terms of distance.
Yeah.
But it amazes me because at that time, Jews were outcasts in the United States. They were considered to be dishonest and greedy and grasping. and well, this is true. And they were the very first ones to come forward and be generous. Now, after them, all the other churches fell into line and said, use ours. What they actually used was the Drury Auditorium.
Oh.
So I was, as I say, both proud and pleased to note that here the city of North Adams finally got its head out of its backside and said to the Jews of North Adams, "You are our neighbors, you are our friends. Here we're going to honor your seasonal celebration."
The Jews in North Adams were a much larger population than in Adams, and they definitely contributed so much more as merchants and manufacturers, and so now they're a large community. And at one time, I think, didn't they have well, I know they had 5 synagogues, but I'm not sure if they were all operating at the same time. I know there were 2 or 3 of them that were probably operating at the same time. And then when Beth Israel was built, they all joined together into one synagogue. Well, I printed their centennial book way back in, I don't know, 19 something or other. It was their 100th anniversary.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get a copy of their book about the synagogues. And I say I was lucky because that got me 2 pictures that I never thought I would see. And that was the auditorium of the theater, which is where they had their sanctuary.
On Center Street.
And looking out from the stage, there's this incredible tin ceiling with a fabulous chandelier hanging. And I would have loved to be there when it was a theater and see that theater in use. It was North Adams' first standalone theater.
Oh, really? Oh. And it undoubtedly wasn't owned by the Sullivan brothers, so.
No, it was not. Although I believe it might have been controlled by them at some point.
Oh.
So, let's go back to the slideshow.
Here's all our churches in Adams. I picked up the upper left-hand corner as a Universalist church because that was probably the first brick church in Adams that was sort of And then after that, below it, the Congregationalist Church was built just after the Civil War. And then up back to the top, the Methodist Church was built around the 1890s. There was a period where something like, I don't know, if are they all up here? Like five churches were built in like 30 years. Because after the Methodists built their church, I don't have the picture of the Baptist church in here. That's got to be corrected.
Any interior pictures?
We'll see interior pictures, I think, of St. Stan's, but I don't, yeah.
Okay.
In 1881, the L.L. Brown, well, the Plunkett's built the Congregationalist Church, and L.L. Brown built the Episcopalian Church, even though L.L. Brown was his family was former Quakers.
St. Mark's.
And next to St. Mark's, you see there, I don't have the Episcopalian Church is the last elm tree standing in Adams. It survived the Dutch elm disease, and it's still there. And then the French Roman Catholic Church on the far right was built in the 1887, 1882, around that era. And then down next to them, the Irish and German Roman Catholic Church, and that was built in 1897. And then and that's where, and then after that, the Polish Church was finished in 1905. And then there was a small Italian Roman Catholic church on Holland Avenue, about where Specialty Minerals is today, and it was a mission church of the North Adams St. Anthony's of Padua. And then there was a group of people from the Polish church who broke away and started their own Polish National Church, where they were an independent Catholic church that was on Murray Street, that is still there, and it's been turned into an apartment building. And it's Bell got out to the West Coast, and it's now on a casino showboat in Laughlin.
I'll bet they appreciate that.
In Laughlin, Nevada. And every now and then I get messages from people who are out in Laughlin, Nevada, and see that it says Adams Mass on it, and say, "How did this bell get out here?" It's a mystery. We don't know how it got there.
I expect quite a lot of Polish people are rolling in their graves over that.
No, just the Polish nationals. There was that big rift. They all broke away, and it wasn't a pleasant thing. There was always a conflict. And then when the church disbanded, some of them became Episcopalian, some of them went to St. Thomas, and some actually came back to St. Stan's, but it was bitter. I don't have, these are Scottish workers from Renfrew. Renfrew was started just after the Civil War, and Jimmy Renfrew and James Chalmers were both from Renfrewshire, and I think they're the ones who, sort of enticed these Scottish weavers, textile workers, to come to Adams. And they became Congregationalists. They didn't have their own church. They had, what's his name, James Burns' birthday. Is that his name, the poet? Burns' birthday was celebrated here for many, many years. And there's still some Scottish, you see there's names here, like Chalmers are still around, Tetlows are still around, Mortons are still around. So there's still some Scots left in Adams.
Now, I see only two of them, well, three of them have their jobs after them. James Morton, second hand, Godfrey Sanderson, overseer, and David Chalmers, chain builder.
I'm sure those are management people. They're the upper overseer and second hand. I think every group had that one of those. But I don't know what a chain builder is.
Robert Powell is a chain builder too. All right.
I wonder if that's I wonder if those are what they are calling loom fixers. There's a great story of a guy was going through the mill and he saw a guy sleeping on the side of and they said, "How come that guy gets to sleep?" And he says, "When that guy's working, the mill isn't producing goods, so I'm happy when I see him sleeping."
That's
Well, these-
cool.
The Germans started coming after the Civil War, and they kept on coming up until there were even Germans who came here after World War II. But they had the claim that they had the first concert on Mount Greylock, and they were quite musical. The Germans had several bands, and they didn't build churches, but they had clubs. There was like 5 clubs. There were Germans, the Einigkeit Lodge. There was the Herman Hall. The Herman Hall is now was the Sahara. Now it's Wojo's. I don't think it's open anymore. The Einigkeit Lodge was the P&A Hall. The Turners built Turner Hall and Adams. Then there was even a German veterans group, and these Germans were veterans of the Austro-Persian War. What was that called? I can't remember now. The Prusso-French War in the 1870s.
Well,
but
I'm very happy to see this because there were bands in North Adams too, but one time I stumbled upon a photograph that blew my mind. It was the North Adams German choir going to Pontusic Lake for a picnic. And it was like 2 carriages that were built something like stagecoaches without roofs. And I'd never heard of a German choir in North Adams.
That's amazing that you had Germans in North Adams, but maybe they were, I don't know. There was also German choirs in Adams too. The Turners definitely had a German choir, and then there was also the Gesangverein, which is the song union, whatever. So they definitely brought music to Adams. But it was great to look at some of these names here of Henry Dahl, and Schmidt, and Milde, and Gebauer, and Tosh. I think Tosh is actually Scottish. I don't think that's a German name. But Wittek was a big name in Adams.
It almost sounds Polish.
Tosh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Stosh.
Stosh and Tosh. Yeah.
You ever had any trouble? Tell them you know Stosh.
Oh, and actually, they probably didn't pronounce it Tosh. I think they pronounced it Tosh. The more I think about it, long ago. So.
Friedrich, Bittner, Wittig.
And we're lucky that these names are people are identified. I only picked photos that were identified, and they put out a little pamphlet for this concert and identified all their band members. And it was funny, they only identified certain people with, let's say Wittig and Jopik. I'm trying to think if they were trying to distinguish the 2 Jopiks, the 2 Witteks. And I don't know why Mr. Bob Jopik got but there's still Jopiks in Adams.
I recognize those 2 names.
I should shout out to Billy Elder. Billy Elder's mother was a Jopik. If anybody remembers, it was the Elders in North Adams. And in German, they pronounced it Jopisch. Jan Kebler.
And I think that's number 8 there. E. Schmidt with the big hat on. So I gather he's the drum major.
Drum major, yes, yeah.
All right, you stand up front and you wave your stick around.
Keep the beat.
Yeah, we will make the music.
We will machen die Musik. The French Canadians started coming in just after the Civil War. I ran across an article in the Berkshire Eagle around 1869 where it said 12 French families moved into Adams this week. So that's like, they were inundated. But a lot of these names are still in Adams. Willette, Borden, Landry. I don't know if those are still Landrys. I don't know if there's any more majors. Yeah, there's majors left in Adams.
And that's amazing that they would let a priest in the class You would think that he would have already graduated.
You got to have a priest in every one of these pictures. But you notice there's no nuns. The teachers weren't there. I don't think nuns were allowed to be photographed in those days. And you see the 225s? That's celebrating his 25th anniversary of being ordained a priest. And those two boys got to hold the, who are they? Number 3,
Oh, yeah. 3
Hector
and
Landry.
5.
Hector Landry and Alfred Major. Number 17, Antoinette Burke Bozek. I know her daughter. I went to high school. Billy Noel. People might remember Billy Noel. Al Boschman. Al Boschman's in here too. He used to be a pharmacist at Park Street Drug. The Italians in Adams are an interesting group. They didn't come from the same place that the Italians from North Adams came from. Most of the Italians from North Adams came from Tyrolia, right? And then there were some Sicilians up here.
I know that my family came from Catanzaro, which is way in the south.
Oh, so you were
It starts in the instep, and it's a narrow thing that goes up and tapers more or less to a point.
okay. But I have so many, like the Faccinis and the Moresis and the Righi, not the Righis, but the Moresis were all from, the Ferraris, the Andreattas were all from northern Italy. In any part, they were actually probably part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, not in the Italians. But the people from Adams came from, most of them, and these are also true of Cheshire too, is Sandro and Berbeno, and which is sort of around, I'm not sure if it's not around Lake Como, because Lake Como was another place where people from North Adams came from. But all these people used to travel between Adams, West Stockbridge, Lee, and Canaan, Connecticut. So they were all born in these different places with all these different Italian communities who all worked as quarry workers. And they all worked in the lime quarries and all those places. So
Only at certain times or certain days?
no, I mean, they would live someplace for 5 years in West Stockbridge and then move up to, they could even work in Cheshire. Cheshire Quarries
I
was
see.
also another place where all the Italians came to.
And
Or
you work-
they would marry somebody who might have been, the daughter of somebody who was from Lee but all those Italians from Adams, Cheshire, Lee, and West Stockbridge are all interconnected because of the quarry.
That's a heck of a commute.
They didn't go. They moved. They didn't commute.
All right, I see. Okay.
But you can see some.
Did any of them work in the lead mine?
I don't know. What, the lead mine in Adams?
Yes.
No, that was sort of. What the lead mine in Adams was just a small farmer's operation. What's his name owned it? Not the Harrington, but Hathaway. Yeah, it wasn't a large operation. It was a small, and it wasn't lead that we think of lead.
Yeah, it was graphite.
Graphite, which was used
Well,
as
the gold mine in North Adams was also a very small
Yeah, right, yeah.
operation.
It wasn't like.
And yes, there really was a gold mine in North Adams,
they have a-
folks.
Talc mine in North Adams? No. I know talc is big
no.
in Row.
I think they had one, a soapstone mine, on the other side of the mountain in the village of Hoosick Tunnel.
But check out these names: Sandrini, De Sensi, Benvenuti. They're all names that people might recognize. The Demastris are still around in Adams. Bartini, some people might remember. Hendrix Bartini, well, that's his name, was on the faculty at Mass College. Ballardinis, there was a police officer in Adams, Gino Ballardini. There was Ballardinis who were in the school system. And you see number 41 is the priest from St. Rita's. When Dolly was here on a Sunday, must have had Sunday services, and then they had a picnic. And someone pulled out a camera and said, let's take a picture of everybody. Luckily enough, this picture had everybody identified.
Yeah, well, I think it's amazing that when they snapped the picture, all those numbers
It was a miracle. It was
Yes.
a miracle Sunday that they came down. And Yiddish and Arabic was also spoken in Adams as well. Looking to the left are Jake Weinberg and his son Mervyn, who created Adams Supermarket. And they took the Adams Supermarket name up and down the county. And they have 7 stores. The farthest one away was in Great Barrington. Here they are posing behind the meat counter at the store in Adams. At the far left is Ed Ginsberg, who married Jake Weinberg's daughter, Sylvia. And then in 1951, there's a notice in the paper where the stores were closed for an observance of the New Year's. And look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 12 stores that were in Adams that were operated by Jewish merchants. And then on the other side is the Lebanese who were also merchants in Adams. Anybody remembers Crystal Creamery? They made ice cream and they had a dairy processing plant. And Salim George here, there were quite a few George families around here. There was a George family in North Adams. There's 2 George families in there's 2 George families in North Adams that later on moved to Williamstown. But I'm told that there's a George family that's a Lebanese family and a George family that's an English family.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But I do know of the H.A. George family.
And they're English, right? They're not.
Yes.
They're not Lebanese. Yeah. But George of Sand Springs, remember the Georges used to own Sand Springs in Williamstown? They were definitely Lebanese.
I think so.
And then down below,
It's a shame about Crystal Creamery going out of business, but I think it was the fact that the milk was so clear you could see through it.
nobody wanted clear milk. We want our milk white.
Oh, go ahead and hit me. You know you want to. Thank you.
Then down below is Kelly's on the corner. Kelly his real name was Khalil, and he thought, no, we'll come in here if you're Khalil, but you'll come in here if my name sounds Irish, and so he changed his business was called Kelly's. And that down below is his son, who ran the soda fountain in the store. Very popular spot with the high school kids back in the 50s.
Bet.
And then he went and bought the Adams Theater, and he ran the Adams Theater up until it closed in 1960 something or other. So he was a popular man in Adams.
I'll bet he was.
I can't remember who the woman next to him is, and I should. But.
Oh, now, before I forget it, I would like to say a few words commemorating the Coreys.
Oh, yes.
Al Corey
yes,
and his wife,
yes.
who were very busy in Adams. I remember the Susan B. Anthony days. They held the movies, outdoor movies. And I know they were very active in the Congregational Church.
Yes. They ran the 2 drive-in movie theaters. It can't be
Oh,
more popular than that. Yeah, because I remember 2 of the greatest traffic jams in northern Berkshire was getting out of the drive-in theater and when the churches let out. Yeah, he provided many happy entertainment. They were an Adams family because Al Corey was born in Adams, but I believe his father later on they moved to North Adams, didn't they? Lived in North Adams?
His father started out shoveling coal in the hotels.
Oh.
And he saved his money and bought a piece of land off Curran Highway. I almost said on Curran Highway, but yeah. Off Curran Highway. And he started a junk business, dealing in car parts and such.
Yeah.
And as that kicked off, he and his son, his eldest son, were thinking of putting in a racetrack on the second half of their land. And they were having dinner with a cousin of theirs from Rutland, Vermont. And he suggested that they build a drive-in movie instead. And they said, well, there's already a drive-in movie down the road in Adams. Won't that cut into our business? The drive-in movie that I have, there are 3 other drive-in movies on the same road, and we're all doing a roaring business.
It was a great
So
concept.
They
Yep.
built the drive-in instead.
And thank you for bringing up the memory of the quarries.
You're welcome. Yeah, they are very much worth remembering.
And last were the Polish, who started arriving around, well, there was a small group here in the 1880s, maybe about 7 or 8 families. But in 1995, they just, it exploded, the amount of Polish people that came to Adams, all because of Berkshire Mill number 3 opening. And most of the Polish people that came were teenagers. They were unmarried kids who came. I don't know how many times someone tells me, "Oh, my grandmother came here when she was 16," or my grandfather came when he was 15. All these stories, and they were teenagers. You know, they're a wild bunch, no matter what era they're in. And there were problems in those days. And I have to, the only thing that sort of like kept them in line, or got them to keep in line, was building St. Stan's and getting a priest here. And then the priest had that authority over them that they would obey him and make sure they started toe the line. But let's see if there's any names here that's still around. Well, Namsiks are still around. Armadas. Oh, yeah.
I've heard Armada.
They watch your show every week. Wyatter, still is Mark Bazilian up there in Cheshire, the Polish hermit. His grandparents were Wyatters. Mesoirs, there's lots of Mesoirs in Adams, and in northern Berkshire, they're everywhere. And I believe all the Mesoirs came from 4 brothers and 1 uncle, I believe, but you don't quote me on that. There's still Koosas in Adams.
And I see one that had a breakfast food named after him or her.
What is it?
Grits.
Oh, grits. But they spell it with a Z or an S.
Ah, that one's on me. Oh.
Punish yourself. So here they are. They would put on these performances, and this one's called the Krakowskie Wesela, which is the Krakow wedding. And they have these, you see the bride and groom up at the top there, and they would have all these people in their native costumes, the costumes of the Krakow area, because that's where most of the Polish people from Adams came from, southeastern Poland. And not from Warsaw, the big cities up north, or the German cities in the west. And so they're all dressed, and they would dance and sing and have, a variety show.
Yeah. Where is St. Michael's?
St. Michael's Hall, there's a Summer Street Hall. It used to be at the bottom of Victory Street and Summer Street, and it burnt mysteriously on Christmas Eve. In 1984, 85, something like that.
That's a shame.
It was when the ZPRK, the Polish Roman Catholic Union, bought it from a German group. The Germans, I didn't mention this, this was another German hall. It was built by, I want to say Ted Keeler. And it was called Keeler Hall for the longest time. And it was also the location of, the Eugene V. Debs spoke here. Do you know who Eugene V. Debs is?
Oh, yes.
The famous socialist candidate for president. He came to Adams on 2 occasions and spoke at that hall. And then this place was also a movie theater for a period of time in the early days. And it has this famous story of if you brought in so many dead flies, you got free admission. So there undoubtedly was a fly infestation in Adams, and they were getting kids to kill flies and bring them to and get a free movie ticket.
Yeah, I remember reading about something like that during the Depression. Well, not just during the Depression, but building up to World War II. There was a children's matinee held, and the price of admission was any piece of rubber.
Oh, rubber collection. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, our rubber supply was cut off when Europe, when the Japanese took over the Asia.
Interestingly enough, Fanta was invented in Nazi Germany.
Fanta?
The soda?
Oh, yeah. I
Fanta.
didn't know that.
You did know that.
I did not know that.
Ah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was actually a Coca-Cola bottling plant. And when the war started and Coke got out of there, the manager wanted to keep the place going. So he found a way to make some fruit-flavored sodas, essentially from discarded scraps. And then he turned to his employees, we need a name for our company, held a contest, and what they came up with was Fanta, which essentially, I don't remember the precise translation, but it's for imagination or fantasy.
Just fantasy.
Yes.
Phantasmagoria. Yeah. Oh, cool. These people in this picture, though, you see it's 1937, 38. These are first generation Americans. Their parents are the ones who came over. And most of these kids are children of those immigrants. So they're still maintaining the traditions and the heritage of their parents.
What is the significance of the hats the men are wearing? I'm looking particular in the first row.
It's just it's the native costume. Same with the women with the vests and the skirts. You know? So the men just got to wear hats.
Well, obviously they're wearing more than just hats.
They weren't wearing because they do have a native costume for men too, and they're just not wearing them. I don't know why. Because they even got feathers in their caps.
Cool.
We could do the next slide. Oh, they even wrote, there was a priest, he wrote plays about becoming American, and about life in America. There's one, I'm in the Army now, dealing with, the situation, dealing with people away at war. And then the Porosky family, just about, life in the family. And adjusting to the difference between the generations of the immigrants and the children. And he went and the last one, Those Little Devils, is just another a comedy about just people having fun.
I thought it was referring to the three children that don't have a father to beat them into submission.
The fact that he published them and that they were still preserved is amazing. That once he was helping here in the transition of becoming American, and then plus the Polish people trying to understand their roots and their new roles in America.
Do you have copies of these?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I wonder if it would be worth it to
Translate.
try to stage these.
Oh, we'd have to translate them first. I don't know if they have a big Polish community. Maybe we'd have to learn Polish. Jestem teraz w wojsku, you can't. So, but White Eagle Printing Company, which was started in Adams, lasted for like 100 years over on Summer Street. They were Polish printers. They printed not only for the Polish people here, but they printed for the Polish communities in Western Mass and Vermont. So they're Polish publishers here in Adams, a Polish press.
Cool. Pardon.
Another famous thing about Adams is that in the rose window, I circled it and you'll see the red circle hanging in the midst. The rose window in the back of the church has this huge window, and then it's a Polish. I call it a window that represents the Polish history of the 20th century. On the left side, you have, and I got that circled in pink as well. His name was Archbishop John Cheplock, and he was lucky enough to be the Roman Catholic bishop in St. Petersburg during the Revolution.
How lucky for him.
Yeah, and there's not that many Roman Catholics in Russia at the time, and so his diocese was all of Russia, from St. Petersburg to Siberia, to Vladivostok in Siberia. And they said he went and visited every Polish parish from there, from St. Petersburg to Siberia. Anyhow, you know that Poland and Russia had a war in 1920. And the Poles won. They beat back the Red Army, and it was because the Poles had air superiority. They knew how to run planes in the 20s, and they beat the Russians that way. Anyhow, so all Poles were suspicious by the communist regime, and here was this Pole that was in St. Petersburg, and they accused him of counter-revolution and also of treason, that they said he was feeding information to Poland about Russia. So I think it was one of the first of the show trials. You know, the communists were big for having show trials. But anyhow, it's so amazing that here it is in a Roman Catholic Church in America. There are the three Russian Bolshevik big boys. On the left is Trotsky, who's bald here, but he actually had that wild hairdo. If you remember Trotsky's hairdo. Then there's Vladimir Lenin, and then last but not least on the side is Joseph Stalin. Even the fact that there's a hammer and sickle insignia in this picture. Anyhow, they did convict him. They shot his secretary immediately after the trial, and they let him live and incarcerated him. And there was sort of like a letter writing campaign, like they do nowadays with Amnesty International, pleading, let him go, free him. And they eventually did. They took him to the Lithuanian border by train and said, get out, and left him at the Lithuanian border. He actually visited Adams. He came here in 1926, and he was touring all the churches, all the Polish churches in America at the time.
Did he make it to all of them?
Supposedly, yes. He was on a whirlwind tour, and unfortunately, his car broke down once in Passaic, New Jersey, and he got chilled or caught something. I know, he got pneumonia. And he died in America. He was supposed to go back to be the Archbishop of Vilnius in Lithuania. Now, if the communists had shot him, he might have been considered a martyr and made a saint. But unfortunately, he died of pneumonia in New Jersey. On the other side is Maximilian Kolbe. And Maximilian Kolbe was a minister, a missionary to Japan. And those, you can see a little Japanese children there kneeling at the altar. He built a monastery on the other side of a hill in Nagasaki. And they told him he shouldn't build it there, he should build it on the other side of the hill. Well, when they dropped the bomb, that monastery, that church was saved because it was on the other side of the hill. He came back to Poland, and the Nazis arrested him. And he was incarcerated in Auschwitz. And in his barracks, somebody ran away, escaped. And so the good old Nazi atrocity, they said every 10th man stepped forward, and they were going to put them in the starvation unit and starve them to death. And there was a man who stepped forward and who had a wife and kids. And Maximilian Kolbe says, I'll take your place because you have a family to return to. And he took his place. And he didn't die of starvation like everybody else, and the Nazis got upset, and they injected carbolic acid and killed him. So here's Poland sandwiched between the communists and the Nazis during the 20th century. Yeah.
And the only thing I have to compare to that was that I went to a wedding in Springfield, and the church had a stained glass window of Lindbergh.
Oh, yeah. In the National Cathedral, they have one of Lindbergh, and they also have one of, they have the astronauts. I think either John Glenn or Shepard, I can't remember which. St. Stan's Church is pretty spectacular. I mean, it's definitely a transplant of Eastern European tradition in Adams. The place is filled with saints and angels. I got here 43 saints and 61 angels. Well, that number of angels, I think, has climbed. Someone's counting them, and I think they're up to 90. I wasn't counting them in other, there's angels inside of pictures with other things,
Oh, they didn't include the chandelier,
It's
the
in
salt chandelier.
It's not a salt chandelier. It's there. Can you see it lit up in the first picture? Yeah.
Just barely.
Yeah, I know. It's not photographed that well. And it's amazing. This church, the stained glass windows, has like a half of the things depicted in the windows are women. Usually in churches, it's all men and images of Christ's life. There, they have lots of women saints, which is I'm not sure who made those decisions, but it's amazing that women got such kind of preference. And I also mentioned here to contrast it with the Quakers here in Adams. And the Quakers, had that code of simplicity where everything had to be plain. Well, 120 years later, Polish came along and completely a whole different attitude towards religion.
Well, that's generally true in Catholicism. I recall hearing from a minister who went to
Rome.
I think it was Puerto Rico. And of course, the people are living in abject poverty. And you go into the churches and they are spectacular. And he wondered why they're spending so much money on the church, which is just, it's a place to worship in, but why aren't they improving their lives? Well, the church is very important to them. So the church is going to be a beautiful place to be in.
Well, not only that, it is sort of, if you see all the saints, it was heaven. So they had created their little piece of heaven on earth, which is the contrast with probably the dreary existence that they lived in, the work, the factory, and their tenements. So. But it's true throughout all of Eastern Europe. The churches are outrageous in color and imagery. Look at the Orthodox. The Orthodox is even 10 times worse than, I should say worse, 10 times more colorful than the Roman Catholics.
And then there are the ones with sacred objects. This little sliver of wood is a piece of the true cross.
Well, they have relics here too. They now have, there's a bone of St. Stanislaus Kostka in this church, a piece of his bone. And there's a piece of the bone of St. Faustina Kowalska, who was a part of the Revelation of the Divine Mercy. So there's some relics here too. Oh, I forgot I had this in here. They were going to close the church down. The bishop, Timothy McDonald, closed it down, and the people immediately occupied it, and they occupied it for 24/7. They were there all, the day and night. It grew to there's something like 269 people here in this picture who were in that vigil. Meanwhile, they got a canon lawyer to actually argue their case at the Vatican, at the Supreme Tribunal of the Apostolic Signatura, and it was a miracle that they won the case. And the tribunal said that the bishop could not, as they said in the document, they could not profane the church. They had to keep it open for services. So here's a little piece of Adams going all the way to Rome. and
Well,
got
I
a
can, I
judgment.
can see the Pope or whoever it was, yeah, the Supreme Tribunal,
Which is basically a bunch of cardinals.
yeah, that I can see that they would say to themselves, ooh, look at how faithful these people are.
Well, that's not true because there was a church in Quincy, which was in, what do you call it, in occupation, occupied the building for like 5 or 7 years. But the problem was their church was on prime real estate. And there's no way they were going to get saved. Yeah, they were. I think they even had beachfront property, and that was like they knew there was money there. And you know, the Diocese of Boston was desperate for money after all the scandal and the paying off the sex scandals.
We're down to 7 minutes now.
I think we're almost at the end of this, aren't we? Yep.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we are.
So, back on us, please. There we go. Well, us. There you are. I didn't want it to be just me.
Thank you for giving me my part.
So we have 6.5 minutes left. When I get home, I'm going to look up chain builders.
Good.
And
We should
see
Google
what
it now
that
on our
is.
phones if we were smart. I got a funny feeling they were like loom fixers. I mean, just been a different name for them. We can talk about the mystery photo.
The mystery photo, yes. We haven't had any calls about the mystery photo. And I, for one, am very upset.
They're probably going to call when this is in repetition.
You know, little kids love this.
I know. I wish I could do it.
So, yeah, you've got to let it grow a little more.
This is like 7 years of growth. It's not going to grow any more than this.
Oh, no, I've been told
And
that if you don't shave them or trim them, they do keep growing.
It doesn't get longer. It just gets kinkier. They don't grow. I guess I could. You know, could do they have hair straighteners, right? I could use if I straighten it, I bet it'll be longer.
Yeah, you can have your sister iron it for you. You know, some years ago, when I could actually walk on Main Street, I was walking along and I saw a guy sitting there, dark chestnut hair down to his mid-back.
Wow.
And a full beard squared off down to here on him.
Knew how to grow hair. I wish I could.
Yes, to get this, I had to treat my face with manure.
Is that what it took?
Now, I can just see young people at home trying that out. Oh boy, if I rub manure on my face, my mother can't smack me because it'll spatter, and I'll tell her, I'm trying to grow a beard. All right, so let's talk about that. Joanne, would you please put the photo in front of us? Thank you. No one wants to take a guess as to what this building is. I'm afraid you will have to tell them.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. That is the Adams Brothers Warp Mill on Grove Street in Adams. You can see it from Route 8, but it's behind a bunch of houses. People know, if you know, people were Pete's Gun Shop, the former Pete's Gun Shop. It's now closed. It's behind that. It's still in existence.
I've seen that from the other side. Going
You can
on
see it. You can see it from the
Asher-Wiltshire.
Asher-Wiltshire Trail. Yes, you can see it from the other side as well. This is the last. When the railroad came through in 1846, there was 5 mills built in 7 years, and this was one of them. All the other mills that were built at that time are gone. This one is still there. And the Adams brothers actually were from Van Duzenville in Stockbridge. And when the railroad came through, they were entrepreneurs, and they decided they were going to build themselves a mill on the railroad, and take advantage of this new, this new transportation method means. And so they came up here and built it. Now the Adams family has been very generous to Adams.
Thank you for naming the town after us.
Exactly. One was named George Washington Adams. And the last Adams, when he sold the mill, W.T. Adams, he contributed, there's a huge scholarship fund with his name on it. He also left a lot of money to the library and also to St. Mark's Episcopal Church. I'm not sure where that money is today, but, I think he left money to the hospital as well. So he divided up his wealth.
Now, the Plunkett Hospital or North Adams Regional?
The Plunkett Hospital. This was water powered, and there is still in the back of the basement is a huge water turbine. There used to be a mill pond sort of to the left of this that tapped off of the Hoosic River, and it fed that mill and powered it, and there's still the works. There, the pulley systems that the turbine turned to operate all the machines throughout the mill.
Is it safe in there?
I don't know. I haven't been in there, and I could go investigate, but
yeah, it'd be worth it to go in there with a camera.
Yeah, the roof is in good shape. Yeah, you're right. I probably should do that. Also, Adams, there's a film made in Adams called Miss Adams of Adams, made in 1917. And according to WCVB, we only got 1 minute left here, it is the oldest footage, one of the oldest footages still in existence. And Miss Adams was one of their daughters. And she was an actress, she acted in this movie with Theo Plunkett. So.
Yeah, as I remember correctly, they both showed up at the end of the movie.
Well, she had cam shots, but he showed up at the end of the movie to take her away because he was going to marry her. Well, all the boys in Adams wanted to marry her and date her, but Theo Plunkett won out.
And on that cheery note, we have 30 seconds left. So I would like to thank you for being here. Thank you for calling me. I didn't need to be reminded, but hey, it doesn't hurt. Ow.
I was afraid I'd be here alone, not knowing, what to do.
Joanne, thank you for directing.
Thank you, Joanne.
You do a fabulous job. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again in 2 weeks here on
Porch Talks.